Hello, thank you so much for joining the Falling for Learning podcast. We are here today. This is our solo episode, and something that has really been all over the internet is how there are different educators and different people referring to students being behind because of the pandemic. But really, it really needs to be noted that students were behind before the pandemic, and now after the pandemic, kids are behind. And what really needs to be talked about is what causes kids to be behind. And some people take the approach where they shame parents and they make them feel bad or whatever. I'm not here to shame you. I have started the Falling for Learning podcast because I understand that parents do need support. They have a lack of understanding about what they're doing or what they need to do to make sure their children are on track for learning and to stay on track for success. And so I'm here to support. But part of addressing any problem is really admitting to the problem. Some of us are in denial. We think things are okay and kids are doing all right and it's not a big deal. But we really need to address that there is a problem. Many of our children are behind. A lot of our African American kids are behind. A lot of our Latino children, children of color, low income children, a lot of kids are behind. And we need to address it. Why are they behind? What can we do to improve the situation? Okay, so I paused a little bit. We have, just to be transparent, we have a lot of family members in and out of the house right now. And so, it's fine. We love our family members, but I really have my podcast. We got to be about our business. We got to make sure that the message gets out to parents. Because a lot of parents, like I said, a lot of kids are behind. And what are we going to do about it? How can we address this situation? And so I'm going to talk about some really key issues that are going to help alleviate this problem. But we're also going to talk about what has caused the problem. So first of all, we're going to talk about safety. A teacher's first job, of course, is to make sure kids are safe. You don't really care what kids are learning if kids are not safe in the classroom. But we also have to think about, do our kids feel safe? Are there a lot of issues going on at home and in the family that is causing kids to feel like they are in a fight or flight mode? They feel like they are being criticized by others, criticized by you maybe. They are in a household where there's a lot of argument and fighting or maybe violence. So those issues really put learning on the back burner for kids. They don't feel safe. And there is where a lot of research has been done about adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And when children experience a lot of these negative situations, these situations with violence and different types of problems that cause them to be traumatized, that they're really stunted in their development. So that's learning as well as their emotional development and their social development. So some of our children are dealing with these issues. You may be a person that's causing it inadvertently. If you grew up in a household where you're yelled at, cursed at, called names and all of that, you could be passing that on to your child. And I've definitely been in an argument with my child before and then, sent them to school and then was like, oh, it was a bad day. Well, because my child was in trouble before they left with me and I didn't close it up. I didn't try to make sure it was mended. I just was like, get out the car, go to school. And of course, they carried that into school. And some of us are dealing with that and we can't shut it off. And we come to school, we come to work mad or whatever. So we have to be aware of that. Our kids have less capacity than we do, but we're not even addressing that. So a lot of people feel like, oh, they're okay. They're going to be okay. but they're not addressing ongoing issues that are going on. And with African Americans, we know we have generational trauma, and a lot of us haven't addressed it. And we're trying to figure out what's going on with our kid when we are passing down trauma and drama to our children, and they're not able to cope in a productive way with school or other issues. So that's number one. What is happening in the home? If our child's not feeling safe for whatever reason, figure it out. Try to get that support for them. Change the environment for them so that they do feel safe, so that learning can be a focus. But a lot of us, learning can't be a focus if there's so many other things going on in our life. We're so worried about things. We're having a lot of anxiety. It's not happening. Okay? So let's talk about that next issue, low expectations. A lot of our children are suffering because we have low expectations of them and ourselves. Two things, right? First of all, some of us are just saying, okay, as long as they get that 2.0, they can play football, they're fine. They're doing okay. And I have seen lots of kids try to make that bet. Am I doing enough? I just need to do this much. And they lose that bet. They don't make it. They are not able to be eligible for football, basketball, whatever it is. But they thought they were doing enough to get by, and they weren't. So that low expectation is putting them in a situation where they aren't able to achieve. They're not even able to do their goal of playing football, playing basketball in high school because they had a low expectation, and you allowed them to continue that low expectation. So what do I mean when I'm saying parents have low expectation of themselves? It means that we're really busy and we have a low expectation of how much we need to be involved in our children's lives. The teacher's taking care of that. I'm not worried about that. And because of that, we don't know that our child is not getting the education that they need, that there is a subpar educational program or curriculum at our school. And when our kids aren't making the grade, or our children may have made the grade, right? Because there's a preponderance of children that have high grades, but they can't pass standardized tests. That means that the education that they're receiving in school is below what they're supposed to be getting. So those state tests do mean something. And I know I've heard a lot of people say, oh, that they're biased, they're racist, or they don't mean that much. But what I'm saying is it is one data point that we need to look at when we're thinking about if our child is on track for learning and if they're able to stay on track for success. It's one data point. It's not everything. But for us to dismiss it and act as if there is no bearing to it, it really puts us at a disadvantage, because those standardized test scores are what they use for many, many different things. If your child is going into honors class, if your child is able to get credit for college courses in high school, they use those standardized test scores for so many things. But somebody out there is telling you they're not that important. There is some importance to it, and they are high stakes tests because people use them to determine whether or not your child can have access to certain courses or privileges. And so we can't just dismiss them. And the truth is, if your child is on grade level, they should be able to pass the test. So again, you can't just look at grades and you can't just look at test scores. And of course, our children could be having a hard time and the test scores are not that good, not a good representation or reflection of their ability because they were having a bad day or something like that. That's true. But you need to be on top of that. That's not the truth for everybody, right? So you need to really give that test some credence. Like it is something that we have to deal with. And standardized test scores, a lot of people will say, oh, it's just a mess or it's a problem. That's a gatekeeper. That is a gate that you have to unlock for so many things. To be a teacher, I had to take so many tests. And a lot of us had to take tests. Some of us still cannot pass certain tests and not get to that next level because maybe we're not studying enough, or maybe we had a subpar education, but that gap needs to be filled before we can get to the next phase. And it's just the truth. So do not dismiss the standardized test scores. Do not have low expectations for your children. Know that there are certain guidelines that they should have. Having the guideline that your child should have a 3.0, instead of saying, oh, they need to have, all they need is a 2.0, or they're doing okay. As long as they graduate from high school, a D is okay. Have them shoot for more. And when you don't have them shooting for more, then really a lot of times they don't even make that bottom guideline that you have for them. And I'm saying 3.0. I'm not saying that's what everyone should have. Some of us, 4.0, 4.2, whatever it is, right? But the low expectations of ourselves, like we're not involved in our child's education the way we should be. We're not helping them at home. I don't have an expectation for myself, and my child has no expectation that I'm going to be checking. Again, it just perpetuates low expectations and low performance, right? So the other part of that is really thinking about what our kids are saying. So sometimes our kids are complaining about teachers, and we'll say, oh, they just don't like the teacher, or they're just not into school. And we're not really listening to what is being said. Sometimes the complaint sounds something like, oh, that teacher has us writing another essay. Right? And then we'll commiserate with the child. We feel sorry for them. We give them sympathy. Oh, poor, you got to do another essay. That's not right. Didn't y'all just do another essay? That's a lot of work. But really, what we really should be thinking about and saying to our child is, that teacher has high expectations for you. And you can do another essay. Maybe you don't want to, but you can do it. You have the ability to do it. And so let me talk to you about how you need to get it done, or how you might approach it. Because you're getting this because you have high expectations. You're in 11th grade now. You're in 9th grade now. You're in 7th grade now. You need to know how to do essays, and you need to be proficient. You need to be advanced. You need to be fluent. You need to be fluid in how you're doing essays and writing essays. And so your teacher has high expectations of you. There are classrooms, because of special needs and different ability levels of the children, they're not given essays, right? Because they're not able to do it. You're given essays because you have an expectation that you're able to do it. You have the ability to do it, and you can get better at it. So do not commiserate with the child when they're talking about the amount of work that they have. Point out that the teacher has high expectations and help them get a plan of action to get their work done. Sometimes, of course, we'll hear the teachers, being rude, disrespectful, being unfair. So those are different things, right? Of course, you want to protect your child, document those issues, contact authorities about that. But what I'm saying is, a lot of times the conversation about the teacher is about the work that they're giving. It's too much work. I don't like that we have to do all this work. And we're commiserating with them when we shouldn't. We should really be helping them reach the levels that the teacher is asking them to do, to raise the bar for them and help them to meet the expectations that are put before them. So we really have to think about that. We really have to change that narrative of trying to protect our child from learning. And that's where some of us are. Unfortunately, we have to think about our mindset and change it. Are we protecting our kids from learning? Because that's what sometimes we're doing. If we really just break down what the child is saying and then us commiserating with them about it, what does it mean? I'm going to talk to that teacher. They're giving too much, fill in the blank. And if we want our child to reach high goals and standards, then it's not about commiserating when they have high expectations. So again, I'm doing some generalization, but you need to think about case by case. Some of us don't even have that much information about what's going on in the classroom at all. And so we're not commenting on it because we're not even checking in to see what's going on. So that's an issue as well, because the kids know that if you don't care about it, they're not going to care about it. And that's an issue, right? They need to know that you're going to be asking questions, that you're going to know what's happening and you know why it's happening, and you're going to be in there all up in it. So it's very important. We got to really think about what we're doing and the kind of atmosphere that we're putting in place for our students to be successful. And I have said it and I'm going to keep saying it. You are the first teachers, parents, and you are the continuous teachers. You're the continuous teachers. Another issue that's really plaguing education is attendance. Attendance is a big issue. It was an issue for some people before the pandemic, and for some people, it's even worse after the pandemic. And so we really need to make sure that our kids are good at showing up. Some people estimate that showing up is 90% of what they need to do in life. And I don't know about the percentages. That's neither here or there for me. But when our kids aren't showing up, hello, parents and caregivers. Join us every Wednesday for our Well-Educated Wednesdays on Instagram Live from 5:30 to 6 o'clock. We will be getting your questions answered about how to get kids on track for learning and to stay on track for success. It's free, and you can ask any question that you would like. We're here to serve you and to make sure that you have the tools and strategies needed to make sure your kids are a success. And you can make sure that next generation is on a path to greatness. It is very difficult for a teacher to reproduce that school day or the school days that they missed, and there is learning loss there. So they may already be behind and then they're missing several days. How are we going to make that up? And again, let's look at why some of the kids are missing. Some of the kids are missing because as parents, we may be disorganized. We may not have washed clothes. And so our kids don't have clean clothes. And I hear that a lot. Again, I don't want to shame anybody about that because I don't go to the laundromat, which, my family calls the wash house. But figure out ways. I have lived in situations as a child where I didn't have running water in our house and I did hand wash things. And so there are ways to work it out so that we do prepare and look ahead, a week ahead, 2 weeks ahead to make sure that we have enough clothes so that we are able to, have enough clothes to wash and be able to go to school. So think about it, plan out your days, get organized, because when they're not organized and they can't go to school, they're missing out on learning. And we're literally lowering their ability to make money later on. And I'm not just talking about college. A lot of people are like, well, my kid's not going to college or that. But listen, the skills of reading, writing, listening, and speaking and doing math are skills that we need for all types of jobs and careers. Not only jobs and careers, but just to make sure that we're paying the person enough or whatever we need to do to live, to pay our bills, right? Calculating, creating a budget, all those things need to be done if you go to college or not. So these are skills that you need. So, and I really encourage parents to say, today I use my math because I did this. I used my reading when I did this. I used my writing, and I had to use my listening and speaking when I was advocating for fill in the blank. Those skills transferred will really help your child, because a lot of kids today, I've heard a couple of them say it. What am I using this for? What's the purpose of this? And, a lot of times they say it when I am visiting classrooms or helping teachers. As teachers, of course, we need to be explaining how this is transferable to their everyday life and into their future, right? But also as parents, we need to be transferring, like telling them how I transferred this skill, how I use this skill today. And that will help to solidify the need for education for our children. Because I think some of us are telling our kids it's not that important. And it really is. It really correlates to how much money you can make. Do you have those skills to pay the bills? We hear that all, and a lot of our kids aren't going to have it if we are helping them, right? This learned helplessness. They're not going to school on a regular basis. They're not coming on time. So they don't know what's going on in the class, and they get further and further behind. We have low expectations for them. We say it's okay if you just do this much. And again, it may set them up so they can't actually do the things that they really love, like play football or soccer or whatever it is, because the grades aren't there. So we really need to think about what we can do to really support our kids. Again, helping them to get organized. And as they get older, really talk to them about what they can do to get organized the night before school starts. So the school day, because they don't have to go to school on late. They could be there on time. And, I'm just going to shift really quickly because the attendance is not just about parents being disorganized. Sometimes we're getting worked, parents. We're getting worked. And that means that we're allowing our kids to convince us that we don't have to go to school today. We're saying, it's just a half day. I don't really have to go to school today. We're not really going to do anything. It's just a half day. We're telling our parents, some of the kids are telling our parents that we're sick. And then abracadabra, we're feeling good halfway through the day. And we're able to play outside, ride our bike. I've seen plenty of kids riding their bike at the end of a school day that they did not attend. I'm on my way home and I see kids riding riding their bike when I'm on my way home. I'm passing by my student who wasn't in class. So, we got to be smarter than our kids. That's what my mama always says. Got to be smarter than our kids. And so some things that I did with my child, because I had to work and she needed to go to school, is if, she was one of those kids who was feeling great the second part of the day where she was feeling sick in the morning, but sick days were sick days. What does that mean? We weren't watching no TV. We were not, playing outside. We were not just chilling, having an enjoyable time on a sick day. We were in bed. It was lay down and go to sleep. Like, you're sick. You need to rest. And it is rest time. In your room, in your bed, sleep. Not your phone, not your computer. We're not streaming and we're not watching TV. Because if she's sick, she's gonna be sick. And for her, that was not enjoyable. And so she didn't have a lot of fake sick days. When she was sick, she was sick. And some of us are allowing fake sick days. It's so enjoyable and fun and comforting to be at home because you've made it that way. I could go outside because I feel better. I could stream all day. I could play my video game all day because I wasn't well enough to go to school. So we really have to think about that. Are your children gaming you up? Having you say, I need to stay at home, I don't feel well, when actually they aren't using that sick day in a sick way. They are playing around. If they are, then you're getting gamed up, and then you're also setting your child up for failure. Because with work, right, school is kind of like the training ground for what they're going to be doing in their career. Habits, they're creating habits. If they're in the habit of going to school late and the habit of not going to school, missing once a week or whatever it is, they're missing just because, then they will try to perpetuate that in a job, and it doesn't always work out to be successful. And again, when I'm talking about jobs, I'm talking about business, I'm talking about college, I'm talking about career. And a lot of us do business with people who have their own business. If they're not showing up on time, they're not showing up, we don't want to deal with them. I had a hairstylist before. I thought she was pretty good, but she was regularly late and I just couldn't deal with it. And I just stopped, right? I stopped dealing with her. I can't. I don't have all day. I got to work. I got a family. I got all kind of things I need to do. She wasn't valuing my time. So I couldn't value her anymore. No, I got to get somebody else. And it wasn't about the quality of the work she was doing. It was about her being late. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And some of us had dealt with that. And that's what our kids are going to be up against. If they're in the habit of not showing up and not showing up on time, they are going to be sadly mistaken once they get into real life. But right now we're laying the groundwork. We're telling them that that's okay. But is it? It's really not okay. And a lot of our children cannot excel. They cannot get to their full potential because they're not attending school like the full year that they need to. And that is a problem, especially if you're a parent that cannot replace that school day. You cannot duplicate the work that they were doing in class. You don't have like the educational training to support them. And the next thing I'm going to really talk about, and I know it's going to make people feel a certain kind of way, but, you know, a lot of us have decided to homeschool our children, and that's great. I think it's great because parents are able to hone in on what they're supposed to be doing for their child, because a lot of us have just given up our power. Whatever the teacher gives, that's what it is. If the teacher did a bad job in first grade, my child is suffering 5 years later from the bad job that the first grade teacher did. Right? So I didn't have any responsibility in trying to make sure my kid is caught up. I'm not paying attention that my child's not getting the correct education and making sure I get tutors or whatever I'm supposed to be doing to make sure my child is on point. We've given up that power and we're a victim of that poor school system instead of really being empowered and looking at what we can do to make sure our child is on track. So I'm glad that there are more parents who have decided they're going to do homeschool or take over the reins, right? Some of us aren't able to do that, or we know we're not organized enough to do it, or whatever the case is. But that does not mean that you are still giving up the power. It's time for you to take back the reins and really talk to the teacher about what's going on in the classroom and what you could be doing at home. Get those suggestions. And for people in general, right? If you're a homeschool parent or you're not, you need to be getting yourself educated about what your child needs. I see a lot of little stuff on the internet saying, God's given you these children. He's going to give you the power to make sure they're whatever. But some of us are taking that from people who are already trained teachers. A lot of those people are like, I was a teacher and now I'm homeschooling my child, which means they have a different level of support and education than you have. And that means that you need to do what you need to do to make sure your child is getting the education that they need. And I'm not just talking about those ABCs. When they get in upper grades, they have specialized teachers. I'm an English teacher. I don't teach math. I don't teach social studies. Those are specialized topics for high school teachers and middle school teachers, and for a reason. So if you don't have that training, you need to make sure you get the training that you need or the support you need. So the Falling for Learning podcast, plus the other resources I have on fallinginlovewithlearning.com will give you some support about what you need. Because I obviously have educational training and I know what to do and I know where to point you in the direction to get to the resources that you need. But please don't listen to someone that is saying you should know. God's gonna give it to you. God has given people like me a gift to make sure that we get the resources out to people. They have teachers there to help direct you and give you some guidance about what your child needs to do. They have tutors out there. They have lots of support. So don't like hide yourself in your room, close your eyes and hug your child and think they're going to get it because God's given me this child. That's not how it works. You have to go out and get it yourself. Right? Take back your power, parents. I'm not here to shame you, but your child was behind before the pandemic and after the pandemic, and you might have been the problem. You might be the reason. Make sure your children feel safe. And if they don't feel safe, get them some resources. Get them some resources. Be honest about whether or not you are passing on some generational trauma, that you are perpetuating the problems with the fight or flight and all of that. Be honest about it. I'm here because I know that I've done some of that. And I did some work, some therapy, all that to try to address it. Of course, who's perfect? I'm not. But I know that I've done work and I got research. Make sure that you have some high expectations for your child. Get rid of those low expectations. Stop commiserating with them about when teachers give them a lot of work. Teachers believe in your children. Many of them do. Of course, I'm going to acknowledge there may be some people who have low expectations for your child or whatever. But I believe there's a lot of teachers that have high expectations, but some of us want to protect our child from learning. And of course, you're not saying it in that way, but if you really think about it, that's what you're doing. Attendance, make sure they're coming to school on time. Get them organized, get yourself organized, and don't let your child game you up and be coming home and staying at home when they could be at school. Don't make it a fun, interesting time at home. Make it a rest day if they got to stay at home. Keep it rest. And finally, don't give up your power. Do not give up your power. These teachers are not the end all be all. You are. You are the end all be all. You are the special sauce. I've taught a lot of children over the years, and I've not been able to duplicate, and I haven't tried, the relationship of their parent, right? You are the one. If learning is important to you, it will be important to your child. If it's not important to you, it won't be important to your child. And you want your child to have the skills to pay the bills, that they will one day be helping to take care of you. They'll have the resources to support you and to give you things and to cherish you in your old age one day. That's what we want. That's what we have earned, if we done what we're supposed to do with our kids. Thank you again for joining us at the Falling for Learning podcast. We are here every week. Saturdays at 5 p.m. is when we drop our new episode. Please listen in every week for those strategies and tips to keep you and the next generation on track for success. You can also find us on YouTube by going to youtube.com/@fall4learning. Again, that's youtube.com@fall4learning. We really appreciate you, and we are here on a mission to make sure that next generation is on track for success and on track for learning. Thanks again. I'm TD Flenaugh. Have a wonderful week.